Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit HomeGain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to HomeGain.com. Are you buying or selling a home? Having a realtor can make buying or selling real estate much easier. HomeGain can recommend and connect you with a top real estate agent in your area. Call 866-512-7918 or visit HomeGain.com. Did you know, according to a HomeGain nationwide survey, that having a realtor working for you improves your chances by 50% of getting your home sold? HomeGain can recommend and connect you with the top real estate agent in your area. Call 866-512-7918 or visit HomeGain.com.
You're listening to Real Estate Radio Washington, D.C. Metro with local expert Ryan Sloper. Now, here's Ryan.
Welcome back, Washington, D.C. Metro, to Real Estate Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper, joined by Louis Cammarosano, the general manager of HomeGain. Quick reminder, Real Estate Radio is designed to build the Washington, D.C. Metro's market by giving you good free advice. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, the best number to reach out to us is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. So before we went to break, we were kind of discussing, when a good time to buy would be. And I think it's interesting to note because there was an article in CNN Money that kind of was discussing grab a second home at a bargain price. And there's certain areas, Louis, that we know, like Florida, for instance, that have been, the prices, the actual sales have been up statewide in 2010 by 29%. 29% for condominiums and 5% for homes, but the prices were down 15% and 4% respectively. Now, that was better than the previous year, but when prices were down 24% for homes and 34% for condos. But it's a good opportunity for people that have always maybe thought about buying a second home to get something at severely discounted homes. Now, obviously, income, if people don't have the money to support buying those homes, then it might not work. But there are a lot of people out there that are potentially looking at sometime, maybe borrowing a down payment for their retirement account to go buy their second home, which ultimately might be the home that they end up 5-10 years down the road. So I think that it is interesting that with the low interest rates, it's a decent time to consider buying a second home if you have the money available and if you have the income to support getting a loan for that second home.
Well, those homes, Ryan, in Florida and Phoenix, many of them can be turned into retirement homes, and also they can be rented out.
Yep.
Because right now the pricing of the homes in Phoenix and Florida, you're really in a situation where it's cheaper to buy a house than it is to rent it. So even if you're going to use it part-time, and also the average home price down there is relatively inexpensive. You can get houses there for around $100,000.
Absolutely.
So with a very small loan, and then if you can get some rental income for part of the time you're not there, and you can keep it for 5 or 10 years so you're ready to retire, that's not a bad thing to pick up.
No, and I mean, it's especially when you're talking about sales prices around the $100,000. I mean, most of the time, like if you're a real estate investor and you can go down there, put a little bit of money down, get a loan on that type of investment property and hold on to it. I mean, you're going to have most of the time a positive cash flow, because there's just not as many people that are, willing and able to buy those homes, even at those prices. A lot of people.
That's right, because those homes are priced in accordance with the local economy, not so much on somebody who wants to go live there in retirement.
Absolutely.
If the local economy isn't doing very well, they can't afford the homes. But remember when you spoke with Mitch, one of the other HomeGain agents was on your show once, a lot of his real estate that he sells are from people from the Northeast coming down to Florida.
Yeah, they call them the snowbirds, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about it, like everybody's got a plan of where they want to end up anyway. But, I think part of that planning process is like making sure that you're buying at the appropriate time.
Well, sure, but 5 years ago, if you were planning on your retirement, you looked at your stock portfolio, it was up, and you went down to Florida and bought a $350,000 home.
Yep.
In retrospect, that's not too smart. I mean, now you can buy that same house for probably $120,000.
Yeah, I mean, there are some instances where somebody they are financially able to, see, if that was me, let's just say, and I had done that, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I still have the capacity, I can go and hedge against that bad bet right there and buy another property at the discounted prices for, like you said, $150,000. So there are means if you're willing to, actually be an investor. Now, I'm not talking about buying it and turn around and flipping it, but for holding it, you could turn around and get some positive cash flow coming in versus probably the negative cash flow you have coming in on the other one.
But I think you're making the distinction between an investor and a speculator. I always call people who buy a home, they want to live in it, but they expect it to go up. That's speculation.
Yep.
But people who actually do the analysis, they purchase a home and they look at the cash flow potential, that's an investment. And the way you do that is to see if you can actually make your mortgage payments less than the rent that you have coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's interesting. We'll segue into your Mortgage Matters segment where we kind of, discuss the things that are affecting the mortgage market right now and show it's a great opportunity for you guys out there to look into buying, even if it is a second home or investment property, if you guys have the, available income to qualify for these loans. Last week, according to Bankrate, the average 30-year fix was 4.67%. From the previous week of 4.76%. That's on a 30-year fix. Now, remember, guys, that's depending upon your qualifications. Every person's going to be different. There's how much money you're going to put down, what your credit scores are. All these things dramatically affect your interest rate. I've talked a couple times, but I've had a couple people in the last couple weeks that have called in and say, "Hey, I see. I'm just going to make this bank up, but Navy Federal is quoting on their website." They'll give you 4.375%, and then there's an asterisk next to it that you look down below and you really can't find what that means. I mean, you have to click on another link that then takes you to another link. And ultimately what that means is that, their cost of doing business, if they segue everything or, transition you through the internet to be passed on to somebody that is just going to pull up the computer screen and ask you a couple questions, it's not a good way to go about searching for a mortgage, which is probably the biggest loan that you're ever going to take out. I hate to tell you, but you want to be talking to somebody that's constantly got a pulse on what interest rates are doing. They know how things on the economic calendar, such as when the Fed meets or the unemployment numbers come out, manufacturing numbers, all things that affect the stock market and the bond market. You need to be talking to somebody like that, and that's a professional, not somebody that's posting rates on an internet site that has asterisks next to things that you have to go investigate. Typically, that means that rate is too good to be true. And Louis, I'm sure you've heard this. I mean, you guys are on the internet, obviously, and it can be very deceiving for people out that are shopping for a mortgage.
Those rates are really indications of interest that really to get you to contact them.
Yes. Yep. And and I try once I nail down, and what I do is I'll bring up a screen share on my computer and I'll say, let me go to the site right now for you. And what we'll do is we'll compare apples to apples. And I go to the site, I click on the asterisk, and it shows all the information. They're like, oh, well, now I see it. Now there's the specification. You must have a 740 plus credit score. You must be putting 25% down. This is a 30-year fixed, and that is with a half of origination point. And all those things can be discussed, but what you really want is like you want to be working with somebody that's not going to tell you where the rates are today, but where they're going tomorrow. Because if you're just getting advice based upon today, it might not be the best advice.
Well, also you need advice as to what your particular situation is and when you might actually be needing that loan.
Of course, because we've talked about this numerous times, that your rate lock for the period of time that you can lock in your rate is very critical because, if you're locking in for 30 days versus 60 or 90, that can be a substantial difference in pricing as far as what interest rates you get. And not only that, you bring up a very good point, Louis, that if you're only planning on living in this area because maybe say you're military and you're moving and, your orders are only for 3 years or so, and you plan on, selling it afterwards, or you're going to put a little bit of a down payment down, it might make sense for you to do a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage that's closer to sub 4% range. Mm-hmm. So, those are the things that are out there that you're not going to get that type of advice when you contact, through Bankrate. You click on one of those things. They're not going to sit there and analyze your situation. I mean, I've saved people on, that are in those same typical. Washington, D.C. Metro has a lot of military people. So by looking at their individual situations, finding out what their long-term and short-term goals are, sometimes you're able to save them a couple $100 per month versus what they would have been paying had they just gone and just said, no, I just want the 30-year fixed. Now, why that is so important is I'm a big advocate of paying down your mortgage as much as you can to offset all that front-loaded interest that you pay on a mortgage. When everybody looks at their truth in lending statement and they see that they're taking out a loan for $200 and they're really paying over the course of that like $450, They're like, well, that's ridiculous. And obviously it is. That's how the banks stay in business. But I always tell people, look, treat this as not just as a mortgage. I mean, it's a big debt, but treat it like it's a credit card you're trying to get rid of. If you, can take and over a course of 1 year, just make one extra payment. One extra payment will take it from a 30-year to a 22-year note.
I would agree with that, Ryan, if you weren't anticipating a rise in real interest rates. Because sometimes paying that interest rate over the course of more years is better if the underlying rate you're paying now is less than the future interest rates or the future inflation rate.
That is true, but I mean, when you're still talking, I mean, you're still knocking your payment from a 30 to a 22-year note. For somebody that's looking to, I mean, this is just my personal view. I think that, I'm in my home right now. My goal is to pay that off and then to buy my next home and then put a renter in that home and have positive cash flow coming in. That's, the real estate investor mentality. So I'm not really worried about that because I'll have cash flow coming in. I mean, what I'll probably end up doing is once I get it paid down to a certain amount, take cash out and go buy another property. So I'm going to leverage that back. But you're just offsetting the interest that you're going to pay over a period of time. I still think that that's the best way to go.
That makes sense, but you're also assuming that when you go later in years to get your loan out, that the rate will be attractive.
True. But, what I'm anticipating is rents aren't going anywhere but up, especially with the policies that are being put in place from the Fed and our money becoming more and more worthless every day. So, it's everybody has their own idea about it. But I always just think that, for somebody that's looking to sell their home, if you're not making a decision to pay that down somewhat, you could be stuck where you don't have maybe the option to get out of that home without having come to the table with a substantial amount of money. And that's what's happened over the last 5 years is, nobody's really paid into anything. Not to say that it would be a substantial enough to get out, but that is why we're seeing the strategic defaults as well, because 100% financing and you couldn't do anything.
That is true, Ryan, because most people did not look at managing debt as anything that required any thought or skill. It was just take the loan out and get as much house as you possibly can. And many mortgage brokers, that's exactly what they advise them, and then real estate agents as well, to get as much house as you can, and that generally involved taking out the worst type of loan. And they weren't paying, the interest-only loans.
Yeah, and I think that, we should learn from our mistakes. And learning from what's happened in the last 5 years, I think it is important to say, okay, that's what happened. Let's not let that happen again. 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. You're listening to Real Estate Radio. When we come back, we're going to jump into, why 78% of credit reports contain errors on them. And of 50% of those 78% are affected by people not being able to obtain a home loan. Be right back.